piece of legislation. It's based on two basic things. Free trade is good, and the rule of law is necessary to have that free trade. After question period, I'll be more than happy to take questions from my colleagues.
I thank the honourable member from Saskatoon University for assisting me in bringing us to the next stage to statements by members. Déclaration de député, the honourable member for Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize a milestone anniversary for Hamdard Weekly, the flagship publication of Hamdard Media Group. Founded in September 1991, Hamdard Weekly is a pillar of the Punjabi community across North America, as it is the first weekly periodical to be printed in Toronto, Vancouver, New York, and California. The 25th anniversary of Hamdard Weekly helps to appreciate that we can have multicultural and multi-language media here in Canada. It is a source of our cultural strength through diversity. 25 years on, they continue to put our reports on the talent, the issues, the culture, and the interest of the Indo-Canadian community here in Canada. Once again, congratulations to Mr. Amar Singh Puller and Mrs. Karamjeet Puller, the hard-working team behind Hamdard Weekly, and we can all look forward to their next publication in the newsstands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, the historic Arva Flour Mill is located just outside of London in my riding of Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. This family-owned mill has not had a workplace accident in over 197 years. It supplies unique quality products locally and across Canada. It's a great tourist attraction, and Mr. Speaker, it's the only operational mill like this in Canada. It's really an operating museum. Earlier this year, Arva Flour Mill was subject to a federal labor code inspection, which also governs large mining operations. Mr. Speaker, this will close the Arva Flour Mill. Thousands of Canadians have signed petitions asking the government to exempt this one-of-a-kind flour mill from the Canadian Labour Code provisions. I encourage the minister, just do the right thing and exempt the Arva Flour Mill from the Canadian Labour Code. Thank you.
The honourable member for Brome, Missisquoi. Mr. Speaker, 15 years ago, Brian Tobin, then Minister of Industry, promised to get Canadians from coast to coast to coast online. Today, we know there's still a ways to go. Across Canada, almost 100% of the urban population has a fibre optic connection for their internet, while 1 million rural households in Quebec still don't have access to fibre optic cable. Rural Canadians are not second-class citizens, Mr. Speaker. I would like to congratulate the initiative taken by Saint-Armand and Mayor Réal Pelletier, who is working to get Brome, Missisquoi online.
In 2016, high-speed internet with optic fiber is no longer a luxury and should be considered an essential service. It's urgent, Mr. Speaker, that we connect people living in rural Canada. It's urgent, Mr. Speaker, that our rural communities be connected to optic fiber now.
The member for Vancouver East.
It really is true. If you build it, they will come. The old 1950s Hastings Park baseball field was renovated, and for the first time in the tournament's 65 years history, Hastings Little League hosted the Little League Canadian Championships. To make the occasion even more special, the field was renamed after Richard Saunders, president of Hastings Community Little League for a decade and current first vice. There is no question that his decades of involvement have helped shape the lives of countless Van East youth. To the point, Hastings Little League did not disappoint, and they won the tournament and went on to represent Canada at the prestigious tournament held at Williamsport, Pennsylvania. The very tournament that has seen many of its participants go on to big league careers, like Canadians Jason Bay, Adam Lewin, and the Blue Jays' Michael Saunders. Please join me in thanking Richard Saunders for his years of dedication and to congratulate Hastings Community Little League for doing us proud at the Little League World Series.
All right.
The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to announce that my constituent and friend, Sister Louise Dunn, of the Congregation of Notre Dame, is receiving the annual Recovery Day Ottawa Award for commitment and perseverance in supporting recovery for families affected by addiction. As a high school teacher, she became concerned about the terrible impact of drugs and alcohol on her students. So at the tender age of 48, she retrained as an addiction counselor. 33 years ago, she co-founded Serenity Renewal for Families in my riding of Ottawa South. Sister Louise has overseen the development and implementation of a wide range of unique, dynamic programs that have helped thousands of individuals and families cope with the long-term effects of addiction. Sister Louise exemplifies what it is to be a Canadian by graciously helping those who are most in need. Congratulations to Sister Louise. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to remember Jonathan Sobel, who was tragically killed in a traffic accident at the end of August at the age of 33. Jonathan was the executive chef at the Starbelly restaurant in my riding and a graduate of the SAIT culinary program. He was a passionate advocate for local farmers and producers. He made sure to visit the farmers that supplied the food he used in the dishes on his menu. Jonathan was committed to his community, sharing his talent and passion for preparing meals with the children and youth at Haysboro School. He taught them to plant a garden, sow their seeds, cultivate their harvest, and had it all later prepared by Chef Jonathan himself. Jonathan was also volunteering his time at the South Health Campus Hospital, assisting them in their community gardens. He brought his passion for cooking local everywhere. On behalf of my constituents, I would like to remember and honor Jonathan as a talented, thoughtful, and passionate man who made an incredible contribution to his community. I express my deepest condolences to the Sobel family, especially to his parents, Bob and Gina, and all those who call Jonathan a friend. You will be missed.
The Honourable Member for Brossard-Saint-Lambert. Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago, Maurice Bélanger ran in his 8th election campaign with his habitual enthusiasm and energy. For Maurice, no voter was taken for granted. He sought to earn the trust of all.
The Honourable Maurice Bélanger knew how to inspire trust in others. He worked tirelessly for those he represented, be they constituents, Franco-Ontarians, or his colleagues. He didn't give up.
Unfortunately, the energy of the 2015 campaign all too soon gave way to the terrible diagnosis of ALS. We all here witnessed the ravages of this terrible disease on such a good man.
But there was a last battle to be won for Maurice. It was 2016, and he definitely wanted our anthem in all of us to command. Bravo, Maurice, et merci. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Gatineau. Mr. Speaker, September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Let me quote some numbers. In Canada, over 10,000 children are currently living with cancer. Over 1,500 children will be diagnosed with cancer this year, and 1 child in 5, unfortunately, will not survive.
With those startling statistics, only 3% of all cancer research dollars in Canada go towards childhood cancer research. In 2007, my friend and the current Speaker, your colleague of the New Brunswick Legislative Assembly, Chris Collins, lost his son Sean after a 4-year battle with cancer. Since Sean's passing, Mr. Collins has been dedicated to raising funds and awareness for childhood cancer research in Canada. He is currently cycling through his 2nd cross-country charity bike ride. I encourage all honourable members to support his efforts by donating to the Sears National Kids Cancer Ride.
This September, I'll be thinking about Chris, Lisette, and Sean, and also about all the families affected by this cruel disease. Thank you.
The honourable member for Niagara West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past weekend, I attended the Canadian Health Food Association East Trade Show in Toronto, where I had the pleasure of meeting the folks from 88 Herbs, a great company from my riding, located in the town of Grimsby. Unfortunately, their business and the whole industry of natural health products are about to get hit with additional regulations imposed unilaterally by Health Canada bureaucrats. We're all a bit confused as to why this is happening. There is already regulations in place which were introduced by the Standing Committee on Health after meeting with hundreds of witnesses over a 6-month review period. The newly proposed changes will see many natural health products regulated using the same rules as drugs. Natural health products are not drugs, so why regulate them the same way? The result will be simply less freedom of choice for the consumer and reduced access to natural health products. Mr. Speaker, the current regulations have worked since they were put in place, and imposing additional ones is unnecessary and counterproductive. I strongly urge and ask Health Canada not to proceed with the new regulations of natural health products so businesses like 88 Herbs can continue their excellent work. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud Canadian, proud Albertan, and a proud Sikh. We live in a nation where Canadians can practice our beliefs without fear of persecution. Early this week, a racist flyer was posted on the library door at the University of Alberta against people who wear turbans. Faith is important to countless Canadians, and the urban is the central part of Sikhism. I condemn this racist act, which has no place in our schools, our communities, or our nation. But it persists, Mr. Speaker. I take pride in knowing that these attitudes do not represent the majority of Canadians because we want to raise our children in peace. I feel for the individual who posted this flyer because they have difficulty understanding that our nation is strong because of our cultural diversity. I echo the Minister of Defence words today. I'm proud to be Canadian, proud of my service to Canada, proud of my turban. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, I had the opportunity to visit the Centre Éco-Nature and the Parc Rivière-des-Mille-Îles, which works to protect, conserve, and promote the Rivière-des-Mille-Îles region while creating environmental education programs and ecotourism activities. What is the Rivière-des-Mille-Îles? Well, it's 42 kilometers of fresh water with 101 islands where over 150,000 people come every year to enjoy water sports and nature. Éco-Nature has also received a major grant from Canadian Heritage, which will help increase the number of visitors. I would like to congratulate Mr. Jean Lauzon and Mr. Michel Aubé, who created this innovative centre where environmental citizenship has been a priority for over 30 years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I speak for all members in the House when I say it's been a busy summer. From Williams Lake to Anaheim Lake, to Quesnel, to Prince George, to Vanderhoof. I met with the hardworking friends and families of my beautiful riding at Caribou, Prince George. I met them on the doorsteps, in the coffee shops, whether it was talking to the father of three at the 90th Annual Williams Lake Stampede or the line worker at L&M Forest Products in Vanderhoof. They all expressed serious concern over the fact that no new softwood lumber agreement has been reached. And instead of offering assurances that a new deal would be reached, the Minister of Trade has this to say: it's a complex issue. Mr. Speaker, it took the Liberals 10 months to realize that trade deals don't magically negotiate themselves. We're 23 days away from the end of the grace period with no deal in sight. It's simply shameful that this Liberal government is once again ignoring the 150,000 British Columbians employed by the natural resource sector. Once again, Mr. Speaker, it appears that Western Canada has been shut out.
Honourable Member for Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, September 17 was World Marrow Donor Day, and for the occasion, I rise to share a story of my summer, a story of commitment, community engagement, patience, and kindness. It is the effort of Ms. Nikki Rad and Ms. Babayan of Richmond Hill to mobilize over 35 young volunteers in organizing a stem cell registration event in Richmond Hill. In working closely with Canadian Blood Services, territory managers, Ms. Shar Carnes and Ms. Beth Fries, they provided hope for more than 700 patients in Canada waiting for a stem cell match. Mr. Speaker, this summer Richmond Hill made me proud. A community united with love in their hearts to swab their cheeks hoping to be the one match that will cure a Richmond Hill girl from cancer, but also help others in need. I encourage all participants in this initiative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Desnette, Mississippi, Churchill River.
I'm so inspired by the enthusiasm shown by the young Northern First Nations and Métis students for leading the way in creating small businesses driven by local people. The Vice Principal, Mrs. Gail Gardner-Lafleur, is offering the Junior Achievement Program to her class in Beauval. As a group project, the class will learn how to create small businesses in the area of food sustainability in northern Saskatchewan. Miss Terry Huntley has been teaching the Junior Achievement Program at the La Loche Denny High School. Successful small businesses by local students were created. Last year, Fontaine twin sisters made beaded earrings to sell to their inspired customers. Denis Sophine apparel was created by Curtis Herman. Colin Mongrant built Mongrant Photography. Jeffrey Klein started up his coffee shop. I encourage other schools across northern Saskatchewan, on and off reserve, to offer the Northern Junior Achievement Program to help young entrepreneurs. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent decades, Alberta has been an engine of Canada's prosperity. Tens of billions of dollars have been generated by our industry and have been shared with Canadians. Hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs have been created for people in every corner of our country. But today, Albertans are hurting. Nearly 100,000 full-time jobs have been lost in the last year. Insolvencies and bankruptcies at near record highs. Thousands of small businesses have closed and people are losing their homes. Now, Albertans understand that commodity prices fluctuate, but what they do not understand are governments that are making a bad situation much worse, that are jamming on the brakes in the midst of a recession. This Liberal government's part of the problem, raising income, business, payroll, and other taxes, and now threatening to impose a huge job-killing national carbon tax. They're delaying and shutting down critical pipeline projects that would give us access to world markets. Mr. Speaker, it's time to stand up for Canada's energy industry. It's time to be proud of the wonderful work of our men and women in the energy.
The honourable member for West Vancouver Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
I would like to recognize how important public dialogue is toward building public confidence and public trust. This summer, thousands of Canadians participated in town hall meetings on climate change, electoral reform, veterans issues, seniors issues, national defence, and even more importantly, citizens stood up and offered their expertise in business, in environment, to help lead those discussions. In my case, I would like to thank Tim Schultz and Megan Dias on electoral reform, James Glave, Jim Pauley, Anna Stukas, David Hawking, Maren Smith, Peter Truheit, and Matt Rockall on climate change, Ann Titcomb, Sue Elliott, Pat Hunt, and Alison Leaney on seniors issues, and Harry Greenwood on veterans issues. It has been a remarkable summer of creating consultation and connection right across the country, and all parliamentarians are very grateful.
Oral questions, questions orales, honorable chef de
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm deeply concerned about the Liberal government's motivation for deploying our men and women in uniform to sub-Saharan Africa. Our soldiers are not pawns on the Prime Minister's political chessboard to use as his fastest way to a UN Security Council seat. There is no transparency about this dangerous mission. There's no commitment to a vote on it. Canadians deserve an answer. How can they trust that the Prime Minister isn't just using our troops as pawns to achieve his own political goals?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, we've been very extremely transparent from our my mandate letter for our re-engagement on peace operations with the United Nations. When it comes to our important part in the world, made it quite transparent about the recent trip that I took to Africa with retired General Romeo Dallaire and Madame Louise Arbour. We've been extremely transparent. We have announced in Canada the amount of troops that we will committing to peace operations before we actually went to the UN Ministerial Peacekeeping Summit. And when we have more information and do the thorough analysis for this, we will communicate with Canadians properly and debate in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, today we learned through the media that the Prime Minister has entered into negotiations with China on an extradition treaty. According to Amnesty International, the Chinese justice system's use of torture is widespread and systematic, and the repression of human rights is a regular occurrence. Doesn't the Prime Minister understand that our openness to China should be about encouraging them to adopt our values for human rights, as opposed to us giving in to theirs?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, we announced our national security and rule of law dialogue during the Prime Minister's visit on September 12th as part of a comprehensive discussion on expanding our relationship with China. The U.S. and the U.K. have similar dialogues. Rule of law discussions included extradition and transfers of offenders, where we have stressed that Canada is governed by very high standards. The promotion and protection of human rights is an integral part of Canadian foreign policy and a key priority in our relationship with China. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it seems like the Prime Minister's principles can't withstand anything more than a stiff breeze, because back in August, his immigration minister explicitly rejected a formal extradition treaty with China so long as China still had the death penalty. But today, the Prime Minister is at the table hammering out an agreement. I followed the news, Mr. Speaker, and I don't recall any headlines that China has abolished the death penalty. So what has changed in China in a month to lead the Prime Minister to completely abandon Canada's principles on human rights?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, one thing we can certain is our government does believe in dialogue, and through dialogue we can have change. And with this dialogue, we will be able to push human rights. And when it comes to do agreements like this, we will be pushing issue of the death penalty, because human rights is an integral part of our government's mandate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chef de l'Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, later today, this House will vote on the Liberal clawback of the tax-free savings accounts. Our party is standing up for the taxpayer and will vote against this unfair tax hike on retirement and retirees. Conservatives believe in letting Canadians keep more of their hard-earned money and in giving them every possible opportunity to save it. Instead of expanding opportunities for Canadians to save for themselves tax-free, why does the Prime Minister always think that he knows better than Canadians when it comes to their own hard-earned money?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we want to be clear that we're working on behalf of middle-class families and those Canadians who want to get into the middle class. We are ensuring that we have a retirement system that works for Canadians. We focused on doing that by working in collaboration with the provinces to enhance our Canada Pension Plan. We continue to see TFSAs as an important part of our retirement system and are continuing them along the path where they will be increased over with CPI. In total, we will have a strong retirement system for all Canadians.
Chef de l'Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister presented his brand new tax increase for Canadian workers and families. The increase in CPP premiums will lead to job losses and an economic slowdown over the next 12 years. Will the Prime Minister admit that this tax hike will make life more difficult for Canadians who are looking for work, who are paying their way and saving for retirement? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we know that it's very hard for Canadians to save enough for a dignified retirement, and that's why we've come up with a way to cooperate with the provinces to improve our pension plan in Canada. In this way, many Canadians, of the 1.1 million Canadians who are currently in difficulty in retirement, will have a better future. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Mr. Speaker, Liberals have repeated across the country how much they hate Stephen Harper's targets on greenhouse gases. They even warned in their platform of the, quote, catastrophic impact of the Conservative plan. And you know what? We agree. It was inadequate. The Conservative plan was, as the minister said, fake. So why are they copying it?
Here, here.
Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, in the Vancouver Declaration, we and all the provinces and territories agreed to implement GHG mitigation policies in support of meeting or exceeding Canada's 2030 target of a 30% reduction below 2005 levels of emissions, including specific provincial and territorial targets and objectives, and to increase the level of ambition of environmental policies over time in order to drive greater GHG emission reductions consistent with the Paris Agreement.
Member for Outremont.
They still aren't doing anything to meet our international commitments, and they know it. But we saw the same thing with Kyoto. The Liberals did nothing, and we had one of the worst records in the world in GHG reductions. They were obliged to admit that they had no plan to comply with Kyoto. It was just a PR exercise. Why won't the Prime Minister admit that it's the same thing here? For Liberals, this was just show. There's no real intent to reduce GHGs. Once again, this was just a Liberal PR exercise. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Speaker, we're working together now to develop pan-Canadian solutions with provinces and territories, unlike the previous government, and we're taking action already on important issues like clean electricity, reducing methane emissions from the oil and gas sector, and investing in public transit and green infrastructure. Our government has been clear from the outset that we're taking a different path from that of the Harper government, who set targets with no plan in place to meet them and undertook no action on climate change.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte Marie. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is in New York City trying to get a seat on the Security Council at the UN, but the allegations of torture by two of our intelligence agencies are resurfacing. Torture is immoral. It's ineffective because you can't rely on the information obtained in this manner, and it goes against all our international commitments. And yet, the ministerial directive allows for the use of information obtained through torture, and that is still in place. Is this government willing to repeal that directive?
Public safety.
Mr. Speaker, the reports conducted by Mr. Justice O'Connor and Mr. Justice Iacobucci are extremely important reports, and the core recommendation in both of those about additional scrutiny, particularly through a parliamentary process, is in fact a recommendation that we are moving on right now with Bill C-22 before this House. More broadly, Mr. Speaker, the fact is that the entire national security framework is under review. We are consulting Canadians. More than 7,000 are already participating in that process, and we are determined to keep Canadians safe.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte Marie. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I'd like to know whether that directive is going to stay in force, the ministerial directive.
Mr. Speaker, today we learned that the government is negotiating an extradition treaty with China. The Justice Department has always been against such an agreement because Chinese courts don't use the same standards as Canadian courts. Torture and physical abuse remain prevalent, and the death penalty is still widely used, including against political dissidents. Is this what the Prime Minister calls standing up for human rights? Yes.
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, our government has been very clear. We need to start a dialogue. We'll be able to promote the objectives of the Canadian government. We believe in human rights. It's through dialogue that we can actually start a conversation and be able to have those difficult conversations with nations where there are issues with human rights. Without dialogue, we can't move the yardstick forward. Being loud from here in Canada doesn't help the people who are actually affected by human rights violations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, since the very start of this Parliament, I've been saying that the softwood lumber file is urgent. Hundreds of thousands of jobs are at stake. There's been a lot of travel to Washington, but nothing's come of it. And basically, the Liberals are all hat, no cattle when it comes to this file. Why can't they sign a deal? Dialogue is all well and good, but you have to ink the deal.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary for the Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, this is a priority for our government. We are committed intensively to negotiations. We had a very productive meeting with producers and workers in the Saguenay over the summer. Even the union spokesperson for Unifor commended the trade minister's efforts. We're looking for a good deal for Canada, Mr. Speaker, but not at any price. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, another union leader criticized the government for giving tax credit that plays favorites. So obviously, those that benefit are going to be in favor. But 65% of Canadian softwood lumber exports go to the U.S. market. In my writing, 70% of the economy is dependent on forestry. And those people are going to get nothing. It's all well and good to talk. The minister said last week that they might litigate. Is that how you treat your trade partners, with respect, by taking them to court? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we've consulted countrywide. We understand the regional differences, the different positions. We understand all the nuances in the Canadian industry, and that's part of what we're trying to move forward on with our U.S. partners, but we're keeping all our options open.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we found out that the Liberals decided they were entitled to line their own pockets with so-called moving expenses for their own political staff. For instance, the Environment Minister gave over $20,000 to one of her Liberal staffers for their move, but documents reveal that money wasn't for movers or hotels at all. Mr. Speaker, if the total cost paid for services was over $20,000, but there were no costs associated with the actual move, exactly where did the taxpayers' money go?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Canadians expect, thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. Canadians expect public resources to be used responsibly and economically, and we are committed to living up to these expectations.
That's a great answer.
So I will let you know that any expenses that were, any assistance in relocation was done in accordance with the rules. We have set the standard high. We are committed to working with Canadians to ensure that we have an open and transparent government, and we will ensure we continue to raising the bar. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Well, I wish her luck explaining the next several years of this. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' sense of entitlement is never ending. The Foreign Minister approved $146,000 to relocate 9 political staff. The Prime Minister gave a whopping $220,000 to 5 political staff, one of whom was handed $126,000 alone. These costs are at the discretion of the ministers and the Prime Minister, and at a time when Alberta families are losing their homes, how can the Prime Minister justify these ridiculous expenses?
Order. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, when you are committed to an open and transparent government, luck is not needed, transparency is needed, and we encourage all members to hold this government to account. We built a diverse team of passionate, hardworking, extremely qualified Canadians to deliver the change people voted for. The team in Ottawa came from coast to coast to coast to serve Canadians and deliver on our promise to grow the middle class and those working hard to join it. This meant that many people had to move to Ottawa with their families and children across the country to serve in Ottawa. As part of this process, some employees receive assistance in relocating. Any assistance.
The Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, I'm shocked at the level of Liberal entitlement when it comes to spending other people's money.
Hear, hear.
Liberal staff received over $1.1 million in payouts to relocate to Ottawa. These cash payouts including over $100,000 to a single Liberal staff member. This should be no surprise given the Liberal whip took $70,000 to move down the street. When unemployment rising and families struggling to make ends meet, why did Liberals think it was somehow okay to spend taxpayers' hard-earned money on these outrageous staff expenditures?
House Leader.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect public resources to be used responsibly and economically, and we are committed to living up to these expectations. We committed to an open and transparent government. That is what we're doing. Any expenses occurred, we're in accordance with the rules. We will continue to raise the bar. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, we already knew the Liberals were free spenders without respect for taxpayers' money. And here's another example to add to the long list. 2 PMO staffers spent a fortune on moving expenses. Over over $125,000 by one, $80,000 by the other. Mr. Speaker, I'd like someone to tell Canadians who sometimes find it hard putting a little money aside who showed poor judgment by approving these expenses and who are the lucky two staffers under the Liberal regime. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians expect public monies to be used responsibly and economically, and we are determined to meet those criteria. Members of the team in Ottawa come from coast to coast to serve Canadians and follow through on our promise to grow the middle class and help those struggling to join it. All moving expenses were paid out in keeping with the rules. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Abitibi, James Bay, Nunavik AU. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's at the UN, where two of his ministers recently promised to implement the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So it's hard to understand why this same government could authorize the Site C Dam without consulting First Nations. The Justice Minister has a constitutional requirement to ensure that Indigenous peoples are consulted before construction is approved. Is this the new nation-to-nation relationship of this government? This cavalier way of violating Indigenous people's rights? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Environment.
In the fall of 2014, the former government approved the project and set a number of legally binding conditions with which the proponent must comply. The project is now in the construction phase. As we outlined in the interim principles, project reviews are continuing within the current legislative framework and in accordance with treaty provisions. This includes not revisiting projects that have been reviewed and approved. I would note, however, that the proponent will need to comply with all applicable conditions.
For Timmins, James Bay.
Whoa. Check out the silence over there from the Justice Minister. Now, you know, I remember when she was a passionate defender of Indigenous rights against Site C, when she said it would damage Canada's international reputation. It ran roughshod over Aboriginal title. But now that she has the legal responsibility to protect Indigenous rights, she's gone to ground. She's sitting there smiling away. Where's the moral courage? I'd like her to stand up and tell Indigenous Canada if she still believes Site C project approvals run roughshod over Aboriginal title. Yes or no? It's a simple request.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we stated in the announcement of the interim principles and the principles on January 27th, and with the recent establishment of the panel that was reviewing EA processes, we're working to modernize and significantly improve how environmental assessments are conducted and major project decisions are made. As part of these processes, Indigenous peoples will be meaningfully consulted, and where appropriate, impacts on their rights and interests will be accommodated.
Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, for over 140 years under both Liberals and Conservatives, Atlantic Canada has had representation on the Supreme Court of Canada. It wasn't just a good idea, it's a constitutional convention. Yeah. Now, the Prime Minister has called this into question. So the question I have for the Minister is, surely, with 4 Liberal premiers down there and 32 Liberal members of Parliament, there must be one of them that's prepared to stand up for Atlantic Canada.
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased that our government introduced a process for the appointment of Supreme Court of Canada judges. To make it open and transparent, I look forward to the independent expert panel bringing back very qualified candidates that respect regional representation, are functionally bilingual, and represent the highest standard of jurists in this country. And I know that there will be a number of jurists from Atlantic Canada that will find themselves on that list.
Here, here. Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, for 141 years, Atlantic Canada has had representation on the Supreme Court. But now the Liberals are prepared to overturn a 141-year constitutional convention shutting out Atlantic Canada. Mr. Speaker, why are the 32 Liberal MPs from Atlantic Canada prepared to allow their region to be the only region without representation on the Supreme Court?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, thank you for the question, because it allows me to highlight the new process that the Prime Minister put in place in terms of Supreme Court of Canada appointments. We respect the idea of having an open and transparent process to gain access to applications from a diverse group of qualified jurists from across the country. We respect the principle of regional representation, and I am confident when the independent expert panel brings back names to me to make recommendations to the Prime Minister that there will be high-caliber Atlantic Canadians on that list.
Now, member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, the deadly drug fentanyl is plaguing Western Canada. In the last 18 months, well over 400 Albertans alone have died from fentanyl overdoses. We need to send a message to these drug pushers who are poisoning Canadians with fentanyl that to do so is tantamount to a death sentence. So, Mr. Speaker, when will the Liberals take action and introduce heavy, mandatory sentences for fentanyl traffickers?
Minister of Health.
I want to thank the member opposite for raising this important matter in the House. The matter of the opioid crisis in this country is a serious one. There are escalating challenges with access to fentanyl, including the fact that people are overdosing and dying as a result. We are working in a collaborative way. The response to the opioid crisis needs to be comprehensive and collaborative. I will be working with my colleague, the Minister for Public Safety, as well as many other colleagues across the country to address this serious problem.
Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister for her response, although she's not committing to tougher penalties. The government of Alberta isn't taking greater action, and the Liberals today at the Health Committee voted down a motion from my colleague from Calgary Confederation for an emergency study on the fentanyl crisis at the Health Committee. Now, we know that fentanyl is primarily produced in China. Much of it is smuggled to Canada. So did the Prime Minister raise these illicit fentanyl exports from China with his counterparts during his recent visit?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, the matter of the opioid crisis, including the fentanyl crisis, is a very serious one. There is no single player that is going to resolve this problem. It will require multiple departments of our government working with provincial and territorial colleagues, working with healthcare providers, and working at all levels to address access to fentanyl, information for prescribers, information for the general public, and all appropriate measures will be undertaken.
For Regina Louvain.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Public Services appeared before committee to discuss the Phoenix boondoggle. The minister was very clear about one thing. It's not her fault. She tried to blame the previous government, her own officials, and pay center employees. Anyone but her. And today, the entire Phoenix pay system crashed. My question is simple. Whose fault is it this time? When will this minister take responsibility, and when will she ensure that all federal workers are properly paid?
For Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to a secure, reliable, and modern IT system. We are working really hard to fix the issues around Phoenix. Our priority is to make sure that employees who work get paid for the work performed. That is what we're doing. We're working very hard to do that. We are not blaming employees who are working hard on this file. We have employees who are working to make sure that other employees get paid. So that's where the focus is making sure that people get paid for work performed.
Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Dairy farmers continue to pay the price for the Liberals' inaction, Mr. Speaker, after having promised to fix the problem of diafiltered milk, which is costing dairy producers thousands of dollars in Canada. There is no sign of progress from the Liberal Party. Once again, today in committee, the minister had nothing new to offer. No plan, no date, and no substance. Mr. Speaker, shame on the government. I am calling on the Minister of Agriculture to finally do his job. Will he stop consulting and finally act to fix this problem once and for all?
Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate my honourable colleague's question and concern. But in committee today, we did discuss this issue, and I think it's fair to say that we all, most of us at least, agreed you don't want a date. What we want is a solution. This is something that we inherited, and we intend to fix it, and we will fix it.
Honourable member for Toronto Danforth. Order.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, Tatiana Maslany won the Best Actress Emmy for her performance in Orphan Black, a Canadian sci-fi series. The Minister of Canadian Heritage launched major consultations on the creation, discovery, and export of Canadian content in a digital world. This will allow Canadians to think about how best to support and promote Canada's creative spirit. Can the Minister tell us what the progress that has been made in these consultations? The Honourable Minister. Thank you. I'd like to thank my colleague from Toronto Danforth for her excellent question, and I'd also like to commend Tatiana Maslany for her award. Our creators in this country are among the most talented in the world, and it is high time for us to say so. Now, to meet this challenge, I launched the broadest consultations in this country's history with regard to the creation, discovery, and export of CanCon in a digital world. I urge all Canadians to participate in these consultations. This is a golden opportunity for Canada to become a leader in innovation.
Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is the only major market in the world without a low-cost airline. The 5 million Canadian passengers who fly out of a U.S. airport each year are telling the Liberals with their feet that Canada needs a low-cost airline like jetlines to compete. Unfortunately, jetlines will become another casualty of the Minister of Transport's endless dithering. Will the Minister wake up, get out of the way, and get jetlines up in the air?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is working collaboratively to address the Canada Transportation Act review and develop Canada's future transportation system. And we are analyzing the application by jetlines and Enerjet for an exemption to foreign ownership limits in that context. Any decision made will be in the best interests of Canadian travellers. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Minister didn't need 5 months to kill thousands of jobs when he blocked the Toronto Island Airport expansion. MPs from all parties and even several ministers have voiced their support for jetlines. They all want to see another airline serve Canada's secondary airports using Bombardier aircraft. The only holdup is that minister's indecisiveness. His apathetic attitude will cost Canadians even more jobs. Jetlines made its request last May. How much time does the minister need in order to make a decision?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague for that question. As part of our engagement process, the minister recently held a roundtable on the traveller experience in order to hear from Canadians on this important subject, because it's the travellers that we want to make sure that have the best traveller experience. So I'll repeat that our government is working collaboratively to address the Canada Transportation Act review and develop Canada's future transportation system. Thank you.
The member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, last week, residents who lost their homes in Fort McMurray wildfires were shocked to learn that rebuilding their homes is going to cost a lot more. A recent Liberal decision to put a 276% tax on drywall will raise the cost of a home rebuilt in Fort McMurray by thousands of dollars. When will the Liberals reverse this short-sighted decision and quit punishing Fort McMurray residents who have already suffered enough?
Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the relevant legislation, allegations of dumping and subsidization are investigated based on complaints that are received. When those complaints are received, there's a decision-making period that takes about 90 days. And then if the decision is subject to objection, it can be referred to the Canadian International Trade Tribunal. Mr. Speaker, the law needs to be applied.
I want to remind the honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands of Standing Order 16.2, which says when a member is speaking, no member shall pass between the member and the chair, nor interrupt him or her except to raise a point of order. So let's not have any further interruptions while someone is speaking. The honourable member for Prince Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This surprise tax on drywall into Western Canada is a real issue for Canadian businesses. We've been hearing from Western Canadian contractors, drywallers, and other small construction businesses that this tax will affect their bottom lines and lead to job losses. With no jobs to spare in Western Canada right now, what will the Liberals do to ensure that more jobs aren't lost as a result of their decision to tax U.S. drywall?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when there has been an allegation of dumping, the decision needs to follow the appropriate process. We will ensure that that process is followed in the most expeditious manner to get a proper decision. And as I say, there is a procedure in place to receive complaints and objections. That is the International Trade Tribunal, and they stand ready to receive the matter and to hear all of the competing points of view.
Member for Churchill, Keewatin-Okaski.
Mr. Speaker, this has been a tough summer for Canadians in terms of job losses, and Northern Manitoba has been one of the region's hardest hit. But let's go back to '97 when the Liberals privatized the port and the rail line in our region and sold it to a U.S. billionaire. This summer, that billionaire shocked all of us and shut our port down. So will the government listen to the Northerners, UCT, PSAC, and so many others and bring the port back under Canadian public control? Will this government stand up for good Canadian jobs and save this vital, strategic Canadian asset?
Here. The Honourable Appointment Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for her question. First of all, my heart goes out for the people and the employees who have been affected in Churchill. I'm deeply disappointed in the decision by Omnitrax to issue layoff notices. My minister has been in direct contact with local leaders from the Northern Delegation, and our government has been in ongoing discussions with provincial and municipal leaders, businesses, and the community as we monitor the situation closely and evaluate the situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, with regard to softwood lumber, the Minister of International Trade and the Prime Minister himself have shown a great deal of optimism over the past months. But now the Minister has announced that she is preparing to wage another legal war with the Americans. The last time this happened, the Canadian industry lost billions of dollars and jobs vanished overnight, especially in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. The government will not be able to keep its promise to reach an agreement by October 12th. Will the government be transparent and admit this fact? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. First, we have to remember that the Conservatives did not try to reach a new agreement while they were in power. When we came to power, Mr. Speaker, we immediately addressed this file. It's a priority for us. We are currently negotiating with our American counterparts, and we are taking into account regional diversities in Canada, and we are especially taking into account the softwood.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Foreign Minister denied any strings attached to Kevin Garrett's sudden release from China. But just the day after his release, Canada quietly announced that negotiations had begun with China on an extradition treaty, and that just weeks after the Immigration Minister denied any such possibility. Given China's history of extrajudicial imprisonment, torture, and execution, are the Liberals really negotiating an extradition treaty, or are they just playing the Chinese, going along for the ride as they are with so many issues domestically?
The Honourable Appointed Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Consular Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This gives me a great opportunity to welcome Kevin Garrett and his family back to Canada. As the Minister of Defence earlier said, we are engaged with China on a host of discussions on a variety of topics, but we want to remind Canadians that we have high standards for anything we engage in, anything we sign. No agreement has been signed, and rest assured we will always defend human rights and Canadian interests.
Thornhill.
Now, we also learned, Mr. Speaker, in that same quietly posted notice that Canada has opened what's called a high-level dialogue on national security and the rule of law with China, and that one of the topics will be cybersecurity and cooperation in combating cybercrime. Really, Mr. Speaker, have the Liberals decided that after any number of cyber attacks on Canadian government departments, that if you can't beat them, join them?
Yeah. Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we're working to expand our relationship with China through principled rules of engagement established through our national security and rule of law dialogue announced when the Prime Minister was in China September 12th. The U.S. and the UK are having similar dialogues. All extradition in Canada is governed by a formal process and must meet our very high standard. Fundamentally, the promotion and protection of human rights is an integral part of Canadian foreign policy and an essential piece of our policy with China.
Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, refugees are being forced to use food banks because the Prime Minister doesn't have a plan to support the refugees he brought here. Gail Nyberg of the Daily Bread Food Bank report said, "I suspect that this is going to be a larger problem as we go forward. Once your EI runs out and you don't have the kind of necessary job skills, you're basically faced with 20 years of poverty before you get to old age." So, Mr. Speaker, this is a question we asked in committee. How many refugees will require social assistance payments by the end of this year? And what will the cost be to Canadian taxpayers and to the refugees themselves?
Full Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question. The issue of food security is an important one for all Canadians, newcomers and people that have been here for several generations. Have there been some issues with refugees using food banks? Indeed, there has. Are we working hard on those issues? Indeed, we are. We've secured jobs. We've secured housing for refugees. We're working on securing jobs for them. I put it to my friend opposite. If we had no plan, I'm wondering why the UN is studying our position at the Refugee Summit on this very day.
Honourable Member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, almost a year ago, Canada elected a new government. One of our main commitments was to resettle and integrate Syrian refugees. Today, we learn that 13 countries are seeking to imitate our private refugee sponsorship program. Can the Parliamentary Secretary for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship tell us about the success of this initiative and our sponsorship procedures? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
It is a tremendous day to be a Canadian. Over the past 2 days, our government, our leader, has been celebrated and welcomed by the UN and by the President for our refugee resettlement efforts. Des milliers de Canadiens se sont...
Thousands of Canadians have participated actively in the resettlement of Syrian refugees' families, and now 13 other countries want to learn from the Canadian experience. Today, we are proud to launch the Global Private Sponsorship Refugee Partnership.
Oops, Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is on another swanning trip at the UN where he's sprinkling taxpayers' dollars around like fairy dust. Meanwhile, at home, a new study has shown Indigenous Canadians are losing limbs, their vision, and even dying from diabetes, a preventable, treatable disease. This is totally unacceptable, and immediate action is required. When will the Liberals stop neglecting business at home and ensure appropriate programs and medical care is available for Indigenous Canadians?
Minister of Health.
Member for the important question, and in fact we can care for people around the world as at the same time as we care for Canadians. I am in fact working very hard with my colleagues in the provinces and territories, as well as of course Indigenous leaders across this country, to address these very problems. I, like my colleague, am very concerned about the rising rates of diabetes, particularly among Indigenous peoples, and there is much work to be done. I look forward to instituting a number of new measures that will make great progress on this very serious problem.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, over a month ago, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans assured me that there was an action plan in place to dismantle the Catherine Spirit, that it would be ready in August. And he promised that this work would start in the fall. but there's been nothing but silence for the past few weeks. The citizens of Beauharnois want to know, will this minister's action plan be delivered to the provincial government, and will the construction of a stone wall around the Catherine Spirit begin this autumn as planned? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. I did have the opportunity during the summer to speak with my colleague about this very important file, not only for the people of her riding, but for the surrounding regions. I can assure my colleague that we are still on time to complete this project. I don't share her pessimism. I'd like to commend the municipality and my colleagues in the Liberal caucus as well for having brought this to the Minister of Transport and myself, and I am confident that we will find an appropriate solution in the coming weeks.
For Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this summer my family welcomed our new son, Francesco. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sunny Ways was followed by a baby boom on this side of the aisle. Mr. Speaker, stability and support for families is paramount to my young family, as it is for so many others throughout my community and our country. Families expect their government to ensure a strong and prosperous future for generations to come. Can the Minister of Finance please update this House on the steps the government is taking to ensure Canadian families have those supports?
Excellent question. Order. Order. We're all excited about baby booms. Let's have order. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I'd like to thank the member for Kingston and the Islands for reminding us of something we know. The last decade of low growth has been tough for middle-class families. That's why last December we introduced a tax cut for 9 million middle-class Canadians that gives a single person on average $330 more this year, a family on average $540 more this year. That's why we introduced the Canada Child Benefit, which gives 9 out of 10 families $2,300 more this year. Later today, we will be voting on Bill C2 to formalize these measures, and I urge all members in this House to vote in favour of middle-class Canadians in support of this legislation.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Lérade. Mr. Speaker, it's too bad that he's going to be leaving such a huge debt for his child. Now, Mr. Speaker, the tragedy of Lac-Mégantic occurred 3 years ago, and on June 24th, the leader of the official opposition came to Lac-Mégantic to confirm that the official opposition wholeheartedly supports the rail bypass project. The Standing Committee on Transport, in a unanimous report, called on the minister to act. Citizens are waiting, and rightfully so. They are waiting for concrete action. What has the Minister of Transport done since June to expedite this rail bypass project in Lac-Mégantic?
The Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The government is committed to improve rail safety, and in Budget 2016, we are investing $143 million to improve rail safety and the transport of dangerous goods. The Minister of Transport had the honour of meeting with citizens of Lac-Mégantic to hear their concerns, and he is aware that the Municipal Council and residents of Lac-Mégantic would like a rail bypass outside the city. We are awaiting the final results of the rerouting feasibility study before making a decision on this file. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. On the excuse of trying to help the sick people in Quebec, the Minister of Health has said that she will be taking away $160 million from them and giving it to her government. That is a declaration of war against Quebec's health system. Cutting transfer payments to Quebec, demanding $160 million from Quebecers, and declaring war against the National Assembly of Quebec. Is that really how the Minister of Health thinks that she is going to help Quebec patients? The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank the member for his question, and I would like to say quite the contrary. Our goal is to be collaborative. No one wins when we are combative in managing health care in this country. And in fact, my communications with my colleague, the Minister of Health from Quebec, have indicated that we need to uphold the Canada Health Act. It's important that if Canadians have paid for care through their taxes, that they get that care and that they don't have to pay again. We will uphold that tax. We will make sure they have access to the care that they need.
Honourable Member from Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, when even the provincial Liberals in Quebec are outraged at what Ottawa has done, in fact, it has cut millions of dollars from the transfers in the form of a fine against Quebecers. Well, the minister has no idea what's going on. There is no government that has done so much in such a short time to undermine the quality of healthcare in Quebec. It takes 18 hours to see a doctor in the emergency ward. It takes 6 months to get an appointment. And the minister would have us believe that the solution is to cut. Does she realize that she is insulting the intelligence of Quebecers? The Honourable Minister.
We will work collaboratively with all provinces and territories in this country to address healthcare needs. We will continue to increase the Canada Health Transfer, as we have already indicated, for next year. But it's also important, as my colleague points out, that we have to innovate. In fact, Canadians should have access to good care. That's why we uphold the Canada Health Act, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to find those good solutions and implement them for all Canadians. Thank you.
It being 3:05, pursuant to an order adopted earlier today, the House will now proceed to the recorded division on the third reading stage of Bill C2. Call in the members. The question is the following one. Mr. Morneau, seconded by Ms. Haidu, moved that Bill C2, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, be now read a third time and do pass. All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
Ms. Chager.
Ms. Shager.
Mr. Hare.
Mr. Hare.
Ms. Qualtrough.
Ms. Qualtrough.
Mr. Sajan.
Mr. Sajan.
Mrs. Philpott.
Mrs. Philpott.
Mr. Goodale.
Mr. Goodale.
Madame Joly.
Madame Joly.
Ms. Mahaichuk.
Ms. Mahaichuk.
Monsieur Leblanc.
Monsieur Leblanc.
Ms. Foote.
Ms. Foote.
Mr. Morneau.
Mr. Morneau.
Mr. Bryson.
Mr. Bryson.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Mr. Macaulay-Cardigan.
Mr. Macaulay-Cardigan.
Madame Leboutillier.
Madame Leboutillier.
Ms. Bennett.
Ms. Bennett.
Monsieur Poisson.
Monsieur Poisson.
Mr. Easter. Monsieur Paradis.
Monsieur Paradis.
Mr. Easter.
Mr. Easter.
Mr. Nault.
Mr. Nault.
Mr. Bagnall.
Mr. Bagnall.
Mr. Casey Cumberland-Colchester.
Mr. Casey Cumberland-Colchester.
Mr. McGinty.
Mr. McGinty.
Mrs. McCrimmon.
Mrs. McCrimmon.
Monsieur Lauzon.